All right, let's get right into it. We're going to talk about a king who was facing, well, impossible odds, and how he managed to save his home, his culture, and his people. This is the story of Alfred the Great.
So I want you to imagine this for a second. Everything you know is under attack. Your country is being overrun, your armies are scattered, and you, the king, are forced to go into hiding. This wasn't just some nightmare scenario. For a young king named Alfred, this was his reality.
So how did this guy end up with the fate of an entire nation on his shoulders? Well, the funny thing is, he was never supposed to be in this position, not even close.
See, Alfred was the youngest son of the King of Wessex, and he had 4 older brothers, so he was way down the line for the throne. His future was probably going to be in the church, a quiet, scholarly life, definitely not commanding armies.
But Alfred was different. He was incredibly bright and just hungry for knowledge. There's this great story where his mother held up a beautiful book of poems and said it would be a prize for the first son who could learn it by heart. His older brothers, not so interested. But Alfred, he immediately went and found a teacher, learned to read, and won that book. It just tells you everything about the kind of determined, brilliant mind he had, even as a kid.
And that determination, it was about to be tested in the most brutal way imaginable. Because while Alfred was growing up, a huge storm was gathering, getting ready to crash down on England.
These invaders were, of course, the Vikings. The English at the time often just called them Danes. They were these incredible warriors and sailors from Scandinavia who showed up in these amazingly fast ships called longships. And you gotta understand, they weren't just looking for a quick smash-and-grab raid, they wanted land. They were here to conquer and to stay.
And they were terrifyingly good at it. Their conquest was shockingly fast. By the year 870, this huge force they called the Great Heathen Army had already swallowed up the other English kingdoms. Then, in one single terrible year, all 4 of Alfred's older brothers died fighting them. And just like that, in 871, Alfred was king of Wessex, the very last Anglo-Saxon kingdom left.
Alfred knew his army was exhausted and outnumbered, so he made a really tough, pragmatic call. He basically paid the Vikings off, a huge bribe of gold and silver to just go away. Now, it wasn't a permanent fix, but it was a clever move. It bought him precious time.
But that time eventually ran out, and what happened next was the absolute lowest point in Alfred's life. This was the moment where it really truly looked like England was finished for good.
In the dead of winter, the Vikings launched a massive surprise attack. Alfred's forces were totally overwhelmed. He had to run, escaping with just a handful of loyal followers deep into the wild, swampy wetlands of Somerset. He was a king with no throne, no army, basically a fugitive in his own country.
And this is where we get that famous story that really shows you his state of mind. He was hiding out in a peasant woman's hut, and she asked him to watch some cakes she was baking. But he was so completely consumed with worrying about how to save his kingdom that he just stared into the fire and let them burn to a crisp. It's a great little story because it shows he was a real person under just unbelievable stress.
But Alfred didn't just sit there and despair. No way. From this hidden island fortress called Athelney, he started sending out secret messengers calling on loyal fighters to rally to him. He was turning his absolute lowest point into the beginning of an incredible comeback.
His new army was going to rely on this incredibly powerful tactic called the shield wall. Now, what's so cool about this is how simple but effective it is. Soldiers literally stand shoulder to shoulder, lock their shields together, and create this nearly unbreakable barrier of wood and steel. It took immense discipline and raw courage to hold that line.
And at the Battle of Edington, it worked. The shield wall held firm against the furious Viking charge, and Alfred's army won a massive, crushing victory. This wasn't just another battle. This was the turning point. Alfred had done the impossible. He had stopped the Viking juggernaut.
But here's where Alfred showed he was more than just a great general. Instead of destroying his defeated enemy, he did something amazing. He made peace. The Viking leader, a guy named Guthrum, actually agreed to be baptized as a Christian, with Alfred himself as his godfather. Then they drew a line across England, creating a territory for the Vikings to rule peacefully, which became known as the Danelaw. Alfred had turned his deadliest enemy into a neighbor.
Alfred knew that winning a war was one thing. Winning the peace, that was the real challenge. To truly save his kingdom, he had to rebuild it from the ground up, stronger than it had ever been before. So this could never happen again. His first big idea was just genius.
a kingdom-wide defense system. He built this whole network of fortified towns. They were called burhs, each with strong walls and a permanent group of soldiers. And he spaced them out so that no village was more than a day's journey away from safety. It was basically a national security grid for the 9th century.
Next, he looked to the sea. He figured the best way to beat Vikings was to stop them before they could even get off their boats. So he designed his own navy. And his ships were totally different from the Viking longships. They were bigger, taller, faster. They were purpose-built warships, not just raiding craft. This is a huge reason why he's often called the father of the English Navy.
But Alfred's vision went way beyond just walls and warships. He was genuinely heartbroken that all the years of war had destroyed monasteries and centers of learning. So he personally learned Latin so he could translate the most important books into English, making all that knowledge available to his people.
And finally, to really tie the kingdom together, he created a single, unified code of law. He collected the best laws from all the old kingdoms and made one set of rules that applied to everyone, whether you were rich or poor. He knew that for a kingdom to be strong, it had to be fair.
So when you start putting all these pieces together, the military genius, the innovative builder, the passionate educator, you really start to get it. It becomes pretty clear why he's the one and only English monarch in all of history to be called the Great.
I mean, just think about the list. He stopped the Vikings cold. He created the first English navy. He built a kingdom-wide defense network. He brought back education and literacy from the brink. He established a fair legal code for everyone. He didn't just save his one little kingdom, he laid the foundation for the entire nation of England. So when he died in 899, the kingdom he left behind was a world away from the one he had inherited in crisis. It was stronger, it was safer, it was smarter, and it was more unified than it had ever been before.
And really, Alfred's whole story leaves us with this one big question to think about. What really makes a leader great? Is it just about winning the wars? Or is it about what they choose to build in the peace that comes after?